1040 WHO.
And afternoons between Rush Limbaugh and Dr. Laura, it is Drive Time Des Moines. Vanna Bonnie take you to work, Sue and Jerry take you home. It's Sue's turn tonight because I'm going to have a crock pot of chili, as a matter of fact. Okay. Yeah, you get a gas allowance. It's 4:22, cloudy, 38 degrees. Sue and Jerry with our technical director, Jenna Winzenburg, which I mentioned because it's interesting. Our guest today shares the same last name, only he's Professor Stephen Winzenburg, Professor of Communications at Grandview College. Good afternoon, Professor, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Jerry and Sue, it's great to talk to you again.
I'm only half teasing because, as I've said before, Stephen Winzenburg is Jenna Winzenburg's dad. It just so happens that he's also the author of a great new book called TV's Greatest Talk Shows, and he sometimes hosts some of the other shows here.
Yeah, I used to have my own show on WHO for 7 years.
Isn't that something?
And I miss it a little bit, but it's fun to come back and sub for Jan every once in a while.
Hey, tell me about the book. It looks like you've pretty much covered the waterfront on this one.
Well, yeah, my last book was called TV's Greatest Sitcoms, and this year we came out with TV's Greatest Talk Shows, and it covers over 150 different shows of every different type, from the daytime trashy talk shows like Ricky Lake and Jerry Springer, through the late-night shows like Letterman and Leno. I even include the news shows, Crossfire, Nightline. We have a section on sports talk shows, fake talk shows, like Comedy Central's Daily Show. So it covers every type of talk show that there is, and it's divided into different sections. And I also come up with the 5 traits that really make up a great talk show host.
Oh, you want to share a little bit of that?
Well, from a TV standpoint, the best hosts are the ones who stay in control, where they keep control of the show. They don't let the guests take charge. They also are very well informed, so they're up on current events. They have to have really interesting guests and interesting topics, so it has to keep the audience interested. They also have to be consistently entertaining, so that every night, night after night or day after day, you are entertained by what they do. And then most crucial is they have to have longevity. They have to be someone that the audience is interested in watching time and time again. We see that Oprah is celebrating her 20th anniversary this year, and that's the perfect example of longevity. People just don't tire of her. There have been a lot of great talk show hosts that were good for a couple of years, but the question is, can you stay on for the long run and have people consistently like you?
What got you interested enough to write a book on the whole thing?
Well, of course, originally I was a radio talk show host, so I was always interested in TV talk shows. And then I started a talk show class, a TV talk show class at Grandview about 12 years ago. And there wasn't really a book out there that covered all of them. There were a couple of books that covered different types of talk shows, but not one that covered all of them. So I just started writing it myself. And probably the most controversial part of the book is my rankings. I actually rank the talk show hosts. I give them grades.
You got an A list, a B list, a C list, a D list, and the failures, some of them that didn't make it.
Yeah, some of the biggest flops, like Magic Johnson and, of course, Chevy Chase. Some of you remember Chevy Chase had a Fox late-night talk show almost 10 years ago that was a great hit the first night, had a gigantic rating the first night, and by the end of the first week, he was a total failure, and he was off the air in less than 6 weeks.
Wow. So who's on your big A list then?
Well, of course, the number one talk show host I consider of all time, and many people do, is Johnny Carson. And, of course, because we're in Iowa, the great interest with Johnny is that he grew up in Iowa. He lived here until 3rd grade. He lived in Corning and Clarinda and Red Oak and Avoca. His dad worked for the railroad, so he moved around. And probably my biggest complaint is that Johnny is not remembered as an Iowan. He's remembered as a Nebraskan.
Yeah, isn't that something?
And it really frustrates me. I think that we in Iowa should be celebrating him much more. He probably is one of our biggest national treasures, especially since he lived here till he was 8 or 9 years old. His formative years were here in Iowa, and he is considered by most the greatest talk show host of all time.
We're talking with Stephen Winzenburg, Professor of Communications at Grandview College and author of a brand new book called TV's Greatest Talk Shows. I couldn't help but notice, but the highest paid host of a news talk program is actually on your B list.
Yeah, Katie Couric.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, she gets a high B. She gets a B+. Essentially, there is some question about, the past couple of years, she's had some negative press. She used to be the underdog when she first started at the Today Show. And now, because of her high salary, she literally gets paid more than any other news person on network television.
Yeah, they're trying to woo her over at CBS, aren't they?
Yeah, and because of that, I think she's lost a lot of the trust of the audience. This happened with Oprah, by the way. There were some years there in the late 90s where Oprah was so big and was making so much money and on so many lists of the most highly paid person in America that she started to lose credibility. It's almost like she lost touch with the common people. And she's brought that back now because of all the great things that she's doing to help others. She went to Africa. You know, she's done her shows where she's rewarded people who helped out with the hurricane. And I think Katie Couric needs some of that, too. She needs to bring it down a notch and get that common touch like she used to have.
Boy, the daytime TV talk shows have really evolved. I remember when Donahue was like the only thing on.
Right.
And the subject matter has changed quite a bit, too. And it seems to me that it's almost like some of the daytime talk shows are just desperate for viewers, and because there's so much out there vying for the viewers' time and attention, it seems like they have to do just outrageous things and have outrageous guests. I don't know where they get some of these people.
Yeah, some people don't even believe them. In my talk shows class, many of my students don't believe the guests, but the studies have basically shown that about 90% of the guests that go on these trashy shows like Springer are real. There certainly are some that are just acting or that are faking it, but for the most part, they are real, and they just want fame. And one of the sections of my book talks about why does someone go on a talk show. And for some people, this is just a great free trip. They want to go to the big city. They don't have any money. It's a second honeymoon for them. And they don't really care if they're embarrassed nationally on television. They go back home and everybody pats them on the back and says, hey, that's cool. You were on national TV.
Do these shows have to pander to the lowest common denominator to get any ratings at all and be successful?
Well, Springer's been real up and down. You know, Springer is the only talk show host that has ever beaten Oprah in the ratings.
I didn't know he was still on the air, frankly.
Oh, yeah. Springer is very much on the air. He's here in Des Moines on Channel 17, Talk 17. So he's very much around, but his ratings are probably only a third to a fourth what they used to be. You know, his big years were in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
So I think we went through a trend there in the mid to late 90s where these trashy shows were the rage. But to be honest with you, I think they've been replaced by reality TV shows. Now we've got trashy reality TV shows to watch instead, which leads me to my next book, which I'm in the middle of writing, TV's Greatest Reality Shows.
How about subtitled Newton Minow Was Right?
A vast wasteland.
You bet. As you said, Oprah celebrates her show's 20th anniversary. Ted Koppel, we didn't mention, retires from Nightline. Conan O'Brien prepares to take over The Tonight Show, all featured in the new book, TV's Greatest Talk Shows by Stephen Winzenburg, Professor of Communications, Grandview College, and soon-to-be co-host with Sue Danielson here on Primetime. Good morning. Hey, who publishes this, by the way?
This is from Publish America. The best way to get it is just to go to Amazon.com. You can get a quick Christmas order in now, or you can order it through a bookstore. And also, don't forget the first book, TV's Greatest Sitcoms. That's still out there as well.
Thank you, sir. Good to talk with you again.
Jerry.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Time Saver Traffic is next on News Radio 10.